And we are back for what I think is probably one of the biggest episodes of Behind the Lens that we've had so far this year. It's already the middle of September. Hard to believe. For all of our listeners of the Jewish faith out there, let us say Happy New Year to you. And thank you all for tuning in. I am Debbie Lynn Elias, moviesharkdeblore.com. You can find my movie reviews and interviews on my website, on Examiner, in the Culver City Observer, British Weekly, Santa Monica Observer, Beacon Times Change, Columbus Register. I'm all over the globe. So look for me, but listen here live every Monday, 11 to 12, here on Adrenaline Radio. For those of you that don't know, the show rebroadcasts throughout the week. It's also available on iTunes later, probably tonight. And we've got a video pack that is up later on in the week whenever Jordan has a computer that works and he gets around to editing the show. But I'm here and he's sitting back there laughing. Normally I have one of my cinematic cohorts here. Greg is off being a very dutiful son. So I am left to my own devices today, for which I apologize in advance. But we do have a great show, an absolutely jam-packed show. And as I said, this is a show of champions today. At 11:15, we've got filmmaker Kely McClung, who's going to, and for those of you that don't know, Kely is actually, he at one time held the middleweight championship for the International Full Contact Stick Fighting and Martial Arts competition. He is now an accomplished filmmaker. We're going to talk about his film, Altered. I like to call it Groundhog Day meets Deliver Us from Evil meets existentialism. And it boasts some incredible cinematography from Emoto Harney. I have to give Emoto a huge shout out because it is a stunningly beautiful film. Altered will be at the Action on Film Fest this coming weekend. For its world premiere, and it's already up for 8 different awards, including Best Picture, Best Horror Film, Best Director, and we'll get into all of that with Kely. At 11:30, the man, DDP himself, Diamond Dallas Page, joins us at 11:30 to talk about the resurrection of Jake the Snake, which is opening in Atlanta this Friday on the 18th. Then they're doing a Q&A. I think that Dallas and Jake are going to be participating in that, and possibly director of the documentary, Steve Yu. So we'll hear everything about Resurrection of Jake the Snake, and one of the key ingredients to not only that documentary, but to Jake Roberts coming back and being in the prime of his life with great health, great fitness, and that's due to Dallas's DDPYOGA. So we're going to talk to him about that. And as you know, Dallas is a champion. I mean, 3-time WCW, 2 or 3-time US WCW champ. So another champion here. And then at 11:45, we've got National College Emmy winner, Allan Luebke, who's going to be talking to us about his documentary about Glena Avila. And for those of you who know wrestling, MMA, martial arts, you know Glena. She is the women's MMA champ. And this is her story during the course of the year where she was being a mother to two children, with a house, with a job, and had to make the decision, do you go from amateur to pro, and all the hardships and obstacles that she faced. So, lots of champions today. We're going to be talking to them all. But before we get to that, as you watch the video this week, you'll see that we have more Inside Out accoutrement adorning the set this week. Well, that's because Inside Out, as of this weekend, became the 3rd highest grossing domestic film of 2015, surpassing Fast and Furious 7. Avengers Age of Ultron is still at number 2 with $458 million, but Jurassic World is spanning the epochs, and it is still the number one highest grossing film of the year with $648.9 million. So that's going to be really, to see how this plays out, especially since Inside Out is back in theaters again. Domestic grosses do matter, people. It isn't just about international gross. But before Kely calls in and we get started with our live interviews today, I want to talk about a film that, quite honestly, it's masterful. Time Out of Mind, written and directed by Oren Moverman, stars Richard Gere. The film boils down to two primary components that make this film as spectacular as it is, and that is Richard Gere's introverted and introspective performance and the cinematography of Bobby Bukowski. For those of you who aren't familiar with Bobby Bukowski's work, I think he has 7 or 8 films this year alone. He's worked with some of the best. He's worked with Mark Pellington. I think he even did I Melt With You, one of Mark's visual masterpieces. But here he is teaming up for the 3rd time with Oren, and the two of them have a magic that is undeniable in formulating and in crafting film. This is basically the story of a gentleman named George Hammond. He's lost to society. He's lost to himself. He's become homeless on the streets of New York. He is barely functioning. He is essentially invisible. And there's minimal dialogue. It boils down to gear, and it boils down to the cinematography and the construct that Oren and Bobby developed to tell this story, and relies on the visuals, shooting through multiple layers of windows, blurring out imagery, blurring out a face, so that Richard's character, George, is barely, you can't see him. He just melts into the background, into the cacophony of the city, the buildings, archways, doorways. It is stunning. It is masterful. Gere, I would not be surprised, probably a dark horse at this moment, but I fully anticipate he is going to be a hot contender and be right up there when it comes time for Oscar nomination consideration, Golden Globes. This is the best performance of his career. And quite honestly, I would be pushing Bobby Bukowski for an Oscar nod for cinematography. It's that beautiful. But I had a chance to talk to Oren about the film. And we've talked about it on multiple occasions, but we actually did a quote-unquote, for us, semi-formal interview. We've known each other a number of years. I'm a huge champion and advocate of his work, of his heart, and with this film, I think he outdoes even himself. Now, the story for Time Out of Mind actually came from a British writer, Geoffrey Kane, who you may know best for The Constant Gardener. Wrote the script maybe 20 years ago and kind of fell through the cracks. But I asked Oren about how this ended up. How does it go from Geoffrey Kane 20 years ago into his hands? And here's what Oren had to say.
By the time the script got to me, it was already an old script. It was almost 20 years old. It didn't really work for what we were trying to do. So, we took the core of it, and that's why, Geoffrey has a story credit on the movie, which was the story of a homeless man named George who has a daughter. In the original, she was a law school student, but here I sort of had a different take on her, and who has nowhere else to go. Estranged from his daughter, he ends up in a shelter system for whatever reason, and goes through the process of recognizing the fact that he's homeless and that he may need to do something about it. And then part of it was also a friendship that he struck with this African-American man named Dixie in the original, Dixon in this one. And so we took that kind of triangle, that relationship angle, and created a brand new scenario around it. And this is something that Richard proposed to me at a party, very casually, saying that he's been obsessed with this homeless man character, and he would like to play with him. And whenever an actor of that stature especially tells me, I want to play a character no one would ever think of me to play, I listen. There's something interesting going on. down.
Yeah.
And so I was seduced by that idea of working with Richard so far outside his, film persona, and that's how it all started.
And, I'm so glad Oren was at that party with Richard, because this truly is a tour de force by Richard Gere and also by Oren. And Oren, we're seeing a lot of Oren's work this year. Earlier this year, we saw Love and Mercy. He wrote the screenplay for that, the incredible story, Brian Wilson's story, with Brian played by John Cusack and Paul Dano. Again, extremely moving, extremely powerful. Love and Mercy is current. I think it is now on DVD. It has been on VOD. Time Out of Mind actually hits VOD tomorrow. So if you can't see it in the theater, it's worth the $6.99 or whatever, Time Warner Cable, Comcast, or whomever, whatever they're going to charge you. You will be blown away. But as I mentioned, this boils down to Richard's performance and Bobby Bukowski's cinematography, which Bobby and Oren together, I don't know where one begins and one ends when they start laying out a visual palette and a plan for a film. You saw this with The Messenger that starred Woody Harrelson. You saw this in Rampart, again, teaming up with Woody. Each film is different, eclectic, visually different, and each one as powerful as the other. So I had to ask Oren about the visuals and Richard's performance, and here's what he had to say.
That's the key to it that I think a lot of people don't understand. It's an unbelievable introverted performance, because here's a guy who not only on the level of a character is playing something from the inside, but he's also in situations where, as an actor, where there's no camera around.
Yeah.
He can't perform for a camera. He just has to be alive and present moment, and that creates such an internal performance. And to find external ways of showing it is so difficult and so challenging, and he was able to do it every time. It's really amazing to watch, just from a spectator's perspective for me.
Now, how did you, because I know we had talked about the way that you and Bobby designed the visuals, because we start out in the film where he's totally lost. Richard, as George, he's totally lost. He's hidden. He's invisible. And you're lensing through layers of windows, mirrors, really isolating him from the world so we feel that and we see it. How did you and Bobby approach developing this visual bandwidth and timeline? Because as the film progresses, and as George has more interaction with humanity, with people, a lot of those layers get stripped away, and more color becomes infused. This is a very methodical thought process for what you guys designed.
Yeah, absolutely. And once again, you're one of the few people who saw that. There's definitely a design to the visuals. We started with the photographs of Soul Lighter, and that kind of approach, which is layered, kind of textured, chaotic, but observational, so that some of his photographs, when you see them from the late 40s, for example, or the 50s, some photos you don't really know what they're about. You don't know what the subject of the photograph is, because it's just showing you a slice of life with all its fragments and elements. And Bobby and I, and I'm sure Bobby will talk about it his own way, the way we approach these movies is we always create a visual arc. We want the movement, even if there's not a lot of drama, and Time of Mind has drama, but it's little dramas. It's not like one big kind of like dramaturgy that's controlling the narrative. We still plot out a drama in the arc of the visuals, and so our idea was, here's a story about a man who most of us, including myself, would not really notice on the street as we go through our busy lives. And so we wanted to create the perspective for the movie would be the perspective of the city, perspective of people living in the city, rushing around, living their lives. And so a man like this, you have to make an effort to see him, to really see him, to really pay attention to what's going on with him. And so we gave the perspective of the city, which means you'll see him through windows, you'll see him door frames, you'll see him from rooftops, you'll see him through shop windows, you'll see him with bicycles going by. All these things that are getting in the way of you engaging with this person for whatever reason, but also kind of holding you back from engaging on a compassionate level. It's hard to feel compassion for people you don't really know anything about or kind of engage with their stories. And so as we get deeper and deeper into the story, as you say, these obstructions start melting away to the point that by the end of it, the movie is really quiet. There's nothing in between him and the other characters he's interfering with, specifically his daughter in the last scene. And by the time he's out the door and back into the city, even the street is empty. The cars, we took away the cars. We took away anything that would just be a distraction. And by the way, the only moving shot in the entire movie is the last shot of the movie. And that's because the movement actually creates a possibility.
Mm-hmm.
It's not observational anymore. It's just the camera is now in a place where it's going to tell you what hopefully could lead you out of this movie into a slightly, somewhat optimistic place where maybe things are going to be okay. So all that stuff is completely thought out. As you know me and Bobby, you know that we're very meticulous about our looseness, and so we try to create an arc that makes sense for us in terms of the camera work, and then a lot of stuff happens because we're very kind of rigid about the plan. But
Mm-hmm.
visual world kind of comes alive because we let it come alive in this philosophy of just kind of training a camera on a street corner, but being very far away and letting the city live around the character.
So, directors, take note. You can listen to all of these tips and all of these thought processes of Oren, on the rebroadcast. But right now, it is my friend, the wonderful Kely McClung. Hello, Kely. Are you there?
I'm here, yeah.
All right. Well, hello, Kely. How are you?
I'm doing great. How about you?
I'm fine. So you're following Oren Moverman. You're preceding Diamond Dallas Page.
Yeah, cool. Very good.
So, Altered. Talk about...
For some reason, I'm really straining to hear you for some reason.
Really?
Yeah, I barely can.
You can barely hear me, of all people?
I'm surprised about it.
Well, I'll talk extra loud since I don't know where my sound engineer has disappeared from the booth. I don't know if there's something he could have done to fix it.
Yeah, not a problem.
But I'll just enunciate and talk louder. So welcome. And this is a big week for you. Altered is finally going to have its premiere.
Yeah, it's like a lot of people. Especially in the independent world, it takes a lot longer than you would think to make a movie. And, it's hard to believe, but I actually originally came up with this idea, more than 10 years ago. And then the actual production started 5 years ago, and post-production has dragged on for 3 or 4 years. And but yeah, we had a couple of test screenings, and things went really, really well, and made some slight adjustments. But we have our world premiere officially at the Action on Film Festival this coming Saturday, actually, out in Monrovia, California.
At the Krikorian Theater.
Yeah, it's a nice little town, and they do a good job. And Dell takes over, Dell Weston, the director of the festival, and they've put us in a position to be, one of their primary movies, I guess, or one of their showcased films. We're up for a few awards.
Eight. I counted. 1, 2, 3.
Yeah,
4.
9 actually. So that's pretty cool.
Wait a minute. Which one am I missing? Editing, cinematography, special effects, best director, best picture, best horror film, best artwork.
I don't know. There's something in there. And we've already won a few years ago. We actually entered the screenplay and actually had already won best feature film as a screenplay.
Now, describe Altered. At the top of the show, to me, if I had to describe it briefly, it would be Groundhog Day meets Deliver Us from Evil meets existentialism. Also,
yeah, that's Groundhog Day. That's the I had a film critic in England who's a pretty big time genre critic, and he actually mentioned Groundhog Day. He said, "Hey, this is Groundhog Day with a predetermined unhappy ending.
Well,
And
I don't see it as an unhappy ending, though.
I don't either. I mean, it's kind of a reflection on the idea that we have this ongoing battle of good and evil. Those exist no matter what. So the concept behind the movie, we were reaching for some really big themes, and actually several big themes. And one of those was the idea that the world is literally created from your own perceptions. And as your perceptions change, your experience of the world changes as well. But the essence of good and evil, on an elemental level, those never change. It doesn't matter how you look at them. Evil is evil and good is good. And we tried to explore some different ideas, and we tried to set it up in an orthodox structure that made the audience more or less participate and experience the film and go through some changes, just as our lead character was as well.
Mm-hmm. And, of course, your lead character, played by Amanda Dreschler. Amanda's amazing.
Yeah, we really put her through it. I mean, she's stunning, she's beautiful, she's very, very talented. I'd worked with her once before on another project, and then, we basically torture her physically and mentally the entire film. She really has to, we really put her through hell.
But one thing that is not torture is the beautiful visuals that you and Emoto have created. The combination of Molly Coffey's production design, the artwork, the vibrancy, the saturation, and what you and Emoto designed in terms of lighting and lensing is just mind-blowing. It is beautiful, and I find that dichotomous metaphor, setting it against the evil and the horror that's unfolding. It's a beautiful thing to watch unfold.
No, I really appreciate it. I mean, I spent a lot of time with Emoto. My formula is rust, dust, and dirt. If you have enough money, you can light and film glass and chrome and beautiful fabrics and high tech. You can create beautiful looks. But without a lot of money, and with minimal light and the way digital cameras work, my emphasis is on texture and a depth and a richness. So part of it happens in the searching of the locations. Part of it happened in, just the incredibly rich backdrop that Chicago gives us. It's just an amazing city, so photogenic. And usually I've seen movies set in Chicago, and what happens is they end up with a few postcard type establishing shots, and then you're in an interior or wherever, and you could be anywhere. And I was really insistent that, in my mind and for myself, that if you are watching this film, you experience as if you were thrown in Chicago. And people are surprised at how loud it is or how dirty it is. But, this is a huge international northern city.
Mm-hmm. And I love that you capture the grit of the city in here, but then with the saturation, with punctuation of color, that's where you really see the texture and the hidden beauty.
Well, again, back to perception, the idea that some of these things you would never pay attention to, a mud puddle, a dirty, nasty alley that you yourself would never walk down. But a lot of it's done in camera. A lot of it is done in heavy, heavy post work that I do.
Mm-hmm.
And, I add shadows, I add smoke, I add color, I add, I do a lot. But, the big films do much the same work. And that's, as a filmmaker, that's part of what I'm trying to do. I'm not trying to compete with other independent films or anything else. I'm competing for people's times and energy, and my competition is Ridley Scott or whoever, because again, you're just asking people to give you a couple hours of their time, and I really wanted to make something that sticks with you. So it's taken me 3 solid years of post-production work to make it look like this, but I'm really proud of it and proud of all the work that people did in it. it's not a normal movie. It's not like
It is not
something that a lot of
mainstream.
people are expecting.
Yeah, it is not mainstream. It really is not. Not even mainstream horror.
No, I don't even think of it really
Hmm.
as horror. I think as a horror film, we need to be more bloody, more gory, more whatever. But and it's not really particularly scary, but it is very disturbing.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's because it's touching on subjects that, sometimes we don't want to face some of those subjects. Back to, good and evil, and it obviously has a religious bent to it, and that makes people very uncomfortable. And
Well, I found that it really goes into the recesses of your mind, and it causes you, when you're watching it, to do some self-reflection, some introspection as the visuals, as the story is unfolding, and that frightens a lot of people.
it does, and it makes people kind of uncomfortable. It's not a happy movie, but at the same time, for me as a filmmaker, I mean, I'm not famous. I haven't done anything huge or whatever. But for me, my goal is to make something that can kind of stick with you, which kind of makes you think, which makes you question and consider the movie long after it's over. For me, the worst possible thing would be somebody watches the film and they go, "Hey, that was great. What do you want to eat?" I would be like, "Oh, I failed." But if they walk out saying, "No, wait a minute, I don't get it. Wait, I got to see it again," then that to me is some sign of success that I've accomplished, and my cast and crew and what we set out to do accomplished much of what we did.
Now, you're wearing so many hats in this film: writer, director, editing, producing, and of course, you're acting in it as well.
Yeah, I agonize too over the acting as well. I mean, I cast other people, or I at least read a lot of other people to play my role, and at the end of it, I really have to consider and say, "Hey, am I the right guy for the job?" And this particular film is, as you know, the acting in this catches people by surprise.
Hmm.
I'm at least the third lead, if not the second lead of the film, and I have 0 lines for the entire movie. I have no dialogue, and I thought that would, it was a challenge. you know.
So how do you then know which hat to pull on and off? How do you seamlessly go between writer, director, actor, and editor? Because I'm sure that as a director and editor, while you're shooting, you're also thinking ahead of the game as to what you could be doing in post in terms of cutting and slicing.
Not so much the editing and slicing. I mean, you try to, it's interesting. I mean, you've seen the film, so, there's just a multitude of angles and shots and fast editing and cutting. And I find myself, if I shoot 100 shots, I'm not somebody who says, "Hey, let me just shoot 100 shots and maybe we'll use what we do. Hey, we thought of that." If I've shot 100 shots, somehow 97 of them make it into the final shot. I mean,
Wow.
the final cut list, But one of the things that does help quite a bit when we're looking at the frame and the composition is knowing how I can further manipulate the picture. If you just went by what you see in camera, and working with Emoto for a lot of testing ahead of time and getting her on the same page to understand that this is what you see, but this is what it's going to turn into. And by the end, and through other stuff that I was able to show her, she just trusted me. Hey, this doesn't look that great in camera, but I know what it's going to turn into because, I've showed her before. So in that respect, but, as an editor, you've got to kind of look at things differently.
Mm-hmm.
As a writer, you create a story, and that's kind of your wish list. And then as a director, just the things that come up on set and the fluidity of filming and production, you don't get exactly what you want all the time. But if you're open for it, you get things that you never dreamed of. So then now as the editor, you've got to say, okay, this is what we tried to do. That's all great, but this is what we have.
Mm-hmm.
So here's the pieces. Now, what is the puzzle? What is the picture we're going to make from these puzzle pieces?
Mm-hmm. Now, Kely, with a film like Altered, how much fluidity is there with your working script? Because it is such a visual piece, do you adhere to that working script, or is there room for ad-libbing, changing on the day of?
It's not, it's moment by moment sometimes. That, again, if you're Spielberg and you want rain and it's scheduled to have rain at 3 o'clock, you're going to have rain at 3 o'clock. But in my case, it's like, in fact, it's this movie, because of the fact that, we had smaller budget and it stretched on. I mean, there's shots that have snow in them. Well, those were shot in July. There's other shots that have people's breath, and those were shot in July. Then there's shots where, the shot where I'm laying in the puddles and we're running around without our shirt on and the girl's laying in bed naked. It was 29 degrees outside.
Oh, my God.
That was a long night for that girl.
Okay, so what was the insurance budget on here for health care and for workers' comp?
Well, this has been the movie. Me saying, hey, we're going to get some hot chocolate when we're done. You'll be healthy. and you also see, I do ask a lot of my actors and the cast and crew, but I think where I get away with a lot of stuff, and I think you might be able to tell, is I always put more demands on myself. And the cast and crew know as much as they're going through, I'm going through much, much more. And because of that, I think there's just a respect and a willingness to say, hey, if the leader of the band's going to do it, we will too.
Mm. Well, my friend, I can't thank you enough. Everybody needs to go to Action on Film, Krikorian Theater on Myrtle Avenue in Monrovia, September 19th at 10 p.m. Nobody will be disappointed when they see this film.
Yeah, thank you so much.
And you, I will see over this weekend as well.
Yeah, we will. It's going to be fun. I can't wait.
We're going to have a lot of fun. And right now, I'm going to say goodbye to you and say hello to Diamond Dallas Page.
Perfect.
Thank you, Kely.
Thanks, Debbie. Bye.
Bye. And is this the phenomenal Diamond Dallas Page joining Behind the Lens?
How are you, Deb?
I'm fine, Dallas. How are you doing?
Well, unstoppable. We have a crazy amount of things going on right now here in Smyrna, Georgia, which is one of the suburbs of Atlanta. It's where Julia Roberts was born. It's really beautiful little town that we have here, and we're opening up the DDPYOGA Performance Center this week. So between the grand opening at DDPYOGA Performance Center and Resurrection and Jake the Snake debuting here in Atlanta, it's pretty crazy busy.
Oh my God. And I love Georgia. My mother's family is from there. My aunt lives in southern Georgia in Omaha. My cousin lives outside of Atlanta near you. So I love Georgia, and I love that whole region that you're in. And I'm so excited that the Landmark in Atlanta, that Midtown Art Cinema, is going to be showing Jake the Snake this Friday.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. They gave us a whole week to show it. And then on the 21st and the 22nd, myself, Jake the Snake Roberts, and Razor Ramon, a.k.a. Scott Hall, will all be at the Landmark and doing a Q&A afterwards. And then, like we always do, we stick around then, and because people, they want to do a meet and greet and buy T-shirts and the posters and pictures and stuff. So we stay around there until everybody leaves, and so it's everybody leaves there pretty happy.
Well, and that's something that a lot of people don't. People who aren't familiar with the wrestling world, that they don't understand. I mean, my experience with wrestling goes back to the 60s with the guys like Bruno Sammartino and Gorilla Monsoon, long before it became a really viable, tough, disciplined, and commercialized sport. But you guys are so dedicated to your fans, and I think that's one of the great things about what you have now done with DDP Yoga, and that people can actually see through Resurrection of Jake the Snake is you care about people, you care about your fans, you care about each other, and it's all about helping each other, supporting each other, and making everybody the best they can be.
Yeah, we're and the movie itself. Have you gotten a chance to actually see it yet?
I've seen it 5 times.
Oh, that's awesome.
I kid you
That's awesome.
not. I saw it earlier this year, before the ArcLight Slam Dance Cinema Club screening. I've seen it multiple times since. I watched it again because of the theatrical release now, and I knew you were coming on the show, and I wanted to see it again. Plus, every time I see it, it invigorates me.
Awesome. That's awesome. We got Josh Brolin actually had screened it recently because we're wanting him to come to when we're in Culver City at the ArcLight. We want, of course, we would love to have the great Josh Brolin, the actor, to do our Q&A for us. Last time we had Joe Magliano.
You could have me. You could have me in Culver City.
Well, we'll definitely put you on the list. But when Brolin watched it, he wrote back to Chris, our one of our executive producers, who had sent the movie to him. And I won't get into all the details because it put me over a little too much, and I wouldn't feel comfortable saying that. But he did say a great story of hope and love and real compassion.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, pretty cool coming out of him,
Well, and that's something. The film would not be here now were it not for you. I think that's a very fair thing to say, because you are the one that got Jake back on the path to recovery, the path to positivity, and you did it through your DDP program.
Right. And now let me ask you, and this is really interesting because, I say it one time. I say DDP Yoga one time because I'm doing something in the WWE in the back locker room with my buddies Booker T and Ron Simmons, and that's the only time I ever mentioned DDP Yoga. And you see us working out from time to time, but a lot of the reviews that we got said, we saw this could have been an infomercial, but it's not. And they would make it a point of telling people that this is a story, really just what Brolin said, of, people who, buddies who love each other and try to help each other out. Jake Roberts helped me so much out in my career. I always have to say, because I never forget anybody who helped me. Without Dusty Rhodes, the late, great Dusty Rhodes, he just passed a couple months back. He was my first mentor. Without him, I never, have anything in professional wrestling. But without Jake the Snake Roberts, I never hit that main event status. I'm never a 3-time world champion. Jake gave me a lot of knowledge, and I wanted to help him out, and that's how the movie starts. Mm-hmm. I just wanted to help my buddy out for helping me. And, if I knew how hard it was going to be, if I knew what I was getting into, I know now, because if you knew you couldn't fail, what would you do?
Right.
You know what I mean? Like now I know that I couldn't fail in this because I've seen it. But there's so many times in the making of this movie, me and the director, Steve Yu, would look at each other and we go, dude, do you think anybody's ever going to see this movie? Because I was never going to put it out there if Jake wasn't walking the talk. Mm-hmm. And it really took the last time that he fell. Because, with people who have addictions, it's not like they quit, they go to rehab, and they're never cured.
Right.
They're always going to carry that. But, I would imagine that the percentage of people who go to rehab, and Jake had gone to 11 rehabs. Scott Hall, a.k.a. Razor Ramon, who also is involved in this, he had been to 12 rehabs. Mm-hmm. So it's not like the rehab's going to completely get you to where you need to be. And for Jake and Scott, you know, it really took the last time, you know, because that's where they start the journey of, okay, I'm 1 day in, you know, I'm 10 days in, I'm 10 months in, whatever it is. For Jake, it really took me saying to him, here's what I have found. You are successful a lot when you're by yourself and you're not taking any antabuse. You know, antabuse is the pill that makes a person who has a problem with alcohol, you know, if they smell it, they'll get violently ill. Mm-hmm. And for that reason, it's a good drug. And when you've partied for damn near 45 years and really crazy party for the last 25 or 30, you've got to stop it at the initial spot. And Jake really, you know, he saw his life change as we were together and, you know, back to making more money again, feeling better, you know, and getting to like himself a little bit. But it took all the way to the end to where I was like, bro, I love you. I'm not going to quit on you. If you quit on yourself, that's on you. But for us to continue this journey, for starters, I've taken the film and I put it on the shelf because I have a production company and, you know, a pretty big company as far as, you know, what DDPYOGA is all about. And we're constantly creating inspiring videos to inspire people. Like when we were on Shark Tank, like the sharks were like, you guys are successful in an area of fitness that nobody is except for Beachbody that controls the world of fitness and Gaia, which controls the world of yoga. They were like, how are you guys how are you so successful? And Steve said, the director said, you know, because he's one of my partners here, he goes, we inspire people. And they went, well, that's great, but how do you make all the money? I go, we inspire people. You know, it's a karma thing. You know, we help people. You know, when it happens, it happens. And for Jake, when it came down to, you know, where I was just like, because when you're dealing with addiction, at some point, if you're not an addict, you go like uncle. You know, I can't take anymore. But I said, here's the plan, bro. You got to take that pill, and you got to be nice to people. I know those are tough things. You know, you got to take a video of yourself, taking that pill, and be nice to people. And within, you know, 90 days later, I said, okay, let's start working on the film again. You know, and Jake is well over, close to 2 years now. And what was really interesting, because Jake was one of the smartest people I ever met. And the last 10, 15 years, not so much. But when I first met him, like crazy smart, like really, really smart. Now the fog is clearing. And it's like having, wow, I don't even know this Jake. Because he's just, and his whole life at 60 is getting unbelievably better. And he's all these opportunities. And he actually, for the first time ever, loves himself and getting to have 5 of his 8 kids. He has amazing relationships with them. He got a relationship with all his grandkids, and he's hoping at some point that the other 3 will come around, but he can't. You know, he's got to, you know, all he can do is, you know, do the right thing and keep moving forward, and hopefully it'll all come together for him all the way around.
Well, you know, and something that really stood out for me and touched me deeply in the documentary was when you and Jake together essentially staged that intervention with Scott. And that spoke so loudly and so genuinely. And that's what really, that put everything over the top for me. That this is all about friendship and heart and really caring and compassion.
One of the biggest names ever in our business is Stone Cold Steve Austin. And I showed Steve one of the, we'd probably done 10 edits before I let anybody see it. And my first edit was like, no, stop. Like, I don't know how to do or tell the story the way Steve Yu does. Mm-hmm. I don't know how to edit, that's worth anything. But I know how to put salt and pepper and seasoning on something to make it taste from, oh, that's not bad, to, oh, my God, what is this? And the same thing with food. I have, whether it's inspiring videos or the movies or whatever, but when I first cut, I was like, no, burn that. This sucks. Start over. Here's what I'm trying to say here. And it was amazing to me, the second cut. It was unbelievable. It was a completely different movie. And then it started to take shape. And then by the time I got to the 8th or 10th cut, I let Steve watch it. And he goes, yeah, I like it. And Steve is the hardest one to get anybody to put over. Like, he don't put anything over unless it's unbelievable. And he said, I hated the ending, though. And I said, why did you hate the ending? And he said, because I felt like it left me like, I went on this whole journey with me, and it sort of like took the rug out from underneath the table. I said, okay. And then I went back and I told everybody, what my feedback was for everybody. When Steve Austin saw this film before he came out to my DDPYOGA Performance Center, because he was coming out here to Smyrna, Georgia, to film a couple of his podcasts. He did one with me and one with Jake and one with Scott, and we videoed him. It's something he's doing, he calls Stone Cold Steve Austin Bootleg. And doesn't know what he's going to do with him yet, but we're going to put together something really sweet with a green screen behind us, and it's going to be really, really cool. Well, when he saw this version of the movie, he was blown away. The reaction that we have about him talking about the movie, which he saw it like a week before, was like, we've had a lot of people put our movie over. But Steve, and again, this guy doesn't put anything over. When Stone Cold Steve Austin says he said he shed more than a tear or two, and that he was emotionally touched the way he was. Like that, to me, there's no critic. There is no critic that can tell me any different.
No, Steve, and that's absolutely correct. And I'm thrilled because I also realized that the film is also going to Philadelphia the first weekend in October. The Pope is your opening act. He leaves and you guys come in.
That's pretty sweet.
I really loved seeing that when I realized, oh my God, the Pope is leaving and in comes Jake the Snake with Jake and Dallas and Steve.
Actually, we're bringing Scott Hall. Razor's going to be with us, too. We're going to be there in Philly. And I actually have a keynote speech in Charlotte. So I won't be doing any of the PR that day because I have an hour keynote speech that I just wrote called Owning It. And I think this is the best thing I've ever done. And I get excited. I got excited writing it and, starting to live it so that I can give that talk. I leave there and I fly into Philly that night to do the Q&A and the meet and greet, and then we go to Yonkers for the next night, and we're there for a week. The film's there for a week. We're there for the first night, and then we actually go into AMC in Manhattan, in Midtown Manhattan.
Wow!
AMC gave us a week in Manhattan. Like that's unheard of for a documentary.
That's amazing. But I got to tell you, if anybody's going to give up a week for a doc, this is the doc they need to give up the space for.
Very cool.
Dallas, I can't thank you enough for joining us today. Now, are you going to be in Culver City on the 15th?
Absolutely. As a matter, I think it's the 14th, isn't it?
I don't know. I think Kim was telling me either the 14th or 15th. Whatever night it is, you're down the street from my house. I will be there, whether you have me moderate your Q&A or not.
I will keep you in mind without question. And, what was I going to say? Like Culver City. Oh, God. Oh, yeah. Anyone who wants to know anything, because I'm sure your show goes out all over and on podcasts and all of that,
Yep.
At some point. Anyone who wants to know anything about the resurrection of Jake the Snake, just write down Jake the Snake movie. JakeTheSnakeMovie.com. And if you can't make it to a screening in any of our cities that we're at, still sign up there. Sign up on that site, because we're going to have a date for our VOD, video on demand.
Fantastic.
And we're going to have DVDs out there, and then we'll still tell people somewhere down the line when it makes showtime or whatever.
Fantastic. Dallas, thank you so much. And all of this information will be on, because we also videoed the show today. So all of this will be on the little chyron and on the end credits of the video show also. So people will be able to see it all as well.
And one last thing.
Yes.
Anybody who wants to know anything about DDP Yoga, go to DDPYOGA.com. All the info's there. And if you're in Atlanta and you want to just, 20 minutes outside of the heart of Atlanta is a town called Smyrna, Georgia, the DDP Yoga Performance Center. Go to DDPYogaPC.com and sign up for a class and come in and let me show you what the Fountain of Youth is all about.
Well, I may have to come to Georgia just for that.
Beautiful.
Thank you, Dallas. I hope you'll come back again and join us again.
Absolutely. I will definitely, if we don't, I'm sure we'll talk in Culver City, but let's get together right before the VOD goes out as well. Okay?
Definitely. Thank you, Dallas.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
And that was Diamond Dallas Page. And right now, I have to thank my next guest, Allan Luebke, for being so patient while Diamond Dallas Page was telling us all about DDP Yoga and Jake the Snake. Hello.
Hey, good morning.
Hey.
That is the best way to wait on the phone, is to listen to DDP talking about anything.
Well, as I said at the top of the show, I mean, this is a day of champions. We had Kely McClung. Kely, he's a world champion in stick fighting. We've got DDP, who's a world champion in so many things. And now we have you, college Emmy winner, making a documentary about the women's MMA champion, Glena Avila.
Yeah.
I mean, this is, I didn't know what to expect when I watched Glena. I had no clue. I was unfamiliar with her and, the women's MMA. And I have to tell, I am so impressed, and not for the world of the MMA, but for your balance that you brought, and how she, as a single mother, as, a homemaker trying to survive and, work and support her kids and put food on the table and pursue a career, the balance that you show us of how, as a person, she juggles all of this. You could have so easily just gone to and make this all about MMA, and you didn't. This is about Glena Avila.
Hey, well, I'm really glad to hear that you had that reaction to it, because when we were making the movie, that was always the rule that we had, is don't make a movie for mixed martial arts fans, make it for everyone else, because mixed martial arts fans are such a passionate crowd. They're going to watch the movie no matter what. Yep. So we needed to figure out how to share Glena's story with people that might be turned off from cage fighting or might not even watch documentaries. And, the sad reality is that there's not a lot of movies made with female protagonists, and because of that, audiences don't naturally gravitate towards those films. So we had a lot of things working against us. And my interest, I wasn't an MMA fan when I started making this movie. I had watched it in the 90s, Ken Shamrock, Dan Severn. I remember Barbara Walters doing a special with Dan Severn's wife when he was fighting one night. And I rented some VHSs from Blockbuster, but I didn't really know anything about it. I just liked Glena. I thought she was interesting. I thought that at her place in life, being, going on 40, having 2 kids, single mom, holding down a full-time job, trying to keep her house out of foreclosure. She decided to take up this dream of hers, cage fighting, and I was like, that is such a remarkable thing for someone to do. I would love to see what that actually looks like and to watch someone go through it. And it just happened that I met her at that time, and she was amazingly gracious enough to let me follow her with a camera for a year, be in her living room, be in her doctor's office, be at all of her fights. I was always gravitated towards the story of it being a portrait of the modern American family rather than the story of mixed martial arts. I mean, the movie doesn't even explain mixed martial arts. It doesn't explain how you win, and it explains nothing about the sport. We just treated it like baseball.
Yeah, I mean, it's you go and you watch it, and that's it. But it's all about Glena. And, I'm 57, and to see, and at various points throughout the years, I can look back on my life, and yeah, I had to make tough decisions at 40 or tough decisions at 30. And I think every woman in America who sees this film can relate to this film and relate to Glena because of that, the choice that you have to make choices. And do you make them?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I just turned 33 a bit ago, and it's funny how I never really regarded age as anything significant to me. And it's weird now that, I hit 32, 33, I'm really starting to think more about my decisions and about how every year I get older, it's less time to do something else or to change or to switch. And it makes me think a lot harder about, am I on the path that I want to be on? And that's why I just loved what Glena was doing. She was like, I've gotten to this point, I'm 35, 40, and I've got the American dream, and I'm supposed to be happy. And I'm not totally happy. And she had the guts to face herself and say, I know it's not popular societally to say that as a single mom, I've got my house and my kids, that I'm not 100% content. But she knew that there was something missing, and that thing missing was her own independent desire that had nothing to do with her family, that had nothing to do with her job. She just wanted, she needed to back herself into a corner and see what she was made of. And she chose cage fighting as her vehicle for that. And there's probably no better and more literal way to back yourself into a corner and see what you're made of by locking yourself in a cage with someone else whose job is to hurt you to the point where you can't continue.
Mm-hmm. Well, and that you also created this great metaphor because of the cage fighting. She essentially was in an emotional cage trying to figure out where to go in her life.
Yeah, it's amazing how much Glena's personal story dovetailed with the world of cage fighting, and none of it was intentional when we started filming it. When I filmed that movie for a year and edited it for about 3, and frankly, when you said that right now, that's the first time I've ever really thought about that, but you're so right. The story is so much deeper than I realized when I was first making it, that when it started, it was just a novelty piece. It was this lady who was cage fighting, and I thought that was a good way to make a little short film and kind of fill some time outside of my job that I was kind of bored with. And as I started meeting her kids and her boyfriend and her coach and talk with her more, I just realized there was so much going on in this woman's life that I could relate to about, at the time I was trying to learn how to relate to my mom as an adult, and I was really struggling with that. And I thought her son at age 16, he was trying to now interact with his mom as a young man and see his mom as an independent individual woman and not just his parent. And, I really related to that theme. I don't fight, so I don't relate to fighting, but I certainly relate to having to get to know your mom as an adult.
Mm-hmm.
And so those were the themes that I really liked following because they made sense to me.
Well, unfortunately, Allan, we're already out of time today. I am heartbroken here because
not a problem. I had a lot of fun listening to DDP and talking with you.
Will you come back on the show in the next week or two so we can talk more about this documentary?
Would love to.
Because I want to get into your processes on what you did with it.
Yeah, absolutely. I just want to know who's going to be on before me that I'm going to be listening to while waiting.
I'll let Annie know.
Great.
Allan, thank you so much.
Not a problem. You guys have a great day.
Bye-bye. And that's all the time we have today. Join us again next week. Who knows what's going to happen?